The Pembrokeshire coast path stretches from St Dogmell's in the north to Amroth in the south, and for most of its length runs along cliff tops and down alongside sandy beaches that offer walkers access to one of the most scenic and geologically varied coastlines in Western Europe. The path was opened in 1970 after more than 16 years of negotiations and involved the construction of over 400 stiles and 100 bridges. Our journey begins in the village of St Dogmell's, where the tidal mudflats of the Tyvi estuary provide rich feeding grounds for many resident birds, including swans, duck and gulls. The unmarked start of the path lies alongside a slipway, and for the first few miles runs along the road to Poppet Sands. This early section offers fine views over the estuary and Cardigan Bar. It is here, opposite the lifeboat station at Poppet Sands, that the coast path first receives official recognition. Over the years, the dunes have suffered from erosion, and the National Park Authority has introduced a restoration program. Remedial steps have included the extensive planting of marram grass and the fencing off of the worst affected areas. Leaving Poppet Sands, the route turns inland and follows a small road up to Athlecoid Farm, where there are fine views over the bay and Cardigan Island. And it is here that the footpath really begins. During winter months, this stretch can be quite wet and boggy underfoot, while in the summer the headland is ablaze with heather and gorse. As the trail rounds Craigarodin, the cliffs rise to over 120 metres, and this section of coast is noted for its geological folding. Some of the best examples can be found at Caibur Bay, where the path drops down to sea level via a stone clapper bridge. At the entrance to the bay is a large anticline, where the folded rocks are made up of alternate layers of grit and shale, belonging to the Ordovician period. Leaving Caibur, the path turns off the road and runs above a raised beach and offshore stacks. After contours the cliff top for a little while, we arrive at a classic example of marine erosion, the collapsed cave of the Witch's Cauldron. After crossing the natural bridge, the path climbs steeply towards the Troynaboa Peninsula, an area noted for its bird life and seal colonies. The headland offers fine views across the bay towards Dinas Island and Newport Sands. At the northern end of the beach you are presented with two possible routes. The signposted National Trail turns inland and heads towards the town of Newport. Alternatively, you can continue to the far end of the beach and rejoin the coast path at the village of Parog. The inland route runs alongside the fairways of Newport Golf Course, and then follows the northern bank of the River Nevern, whose tidal mudflats provide a rich habitat for a large variety of birds. After crossing the iron bridge, the path bears off to the right along a wheelchair-friendly section and follows the southern bank of the river back towards the coast. It's worth making a short detour at this point to visit the Neolithic burial chamber of Carrick Coiton Arthur. Newport nestles between the Preseli Hills and the River Nevern, and provides the first real chance of an overnight halt since leaving St Dogmell's. The town offers all the basic amenities, together with a National Park Visitor Information Centre. The alternative route along the shoreline of Newport Sands eventually arrives at the River Nevern. At low tide, it's possible to wade across to rejoin the official path at the village of Parog. There was once a thriving port here, exporting slate, herring and wool, but sadly in the late 1880s the estuary silted up and the village's prosperity came to an end. Continuing westwards, the route passes through an area where the quarrying of shale slabs was widespread. The going becomes less demanding as the path hugs the cliff top and passes through the pretty secluded coves of Aberregan and Aber Forest, to eventually arrive at one of Pembrokeshire's best-kept secrets, Cwmar Eglwys. The ruins of St Brynach's Church nestle at the water's edge. The building was destroyed during the Great Storm of 1859, when over 100 ships were wrecked off the Welsh coast. Today, only the west wall and bell tower remain. Leaving Cwmar Eglwys, we are presented with two possible routes. The first saves a few miles of strenuous walking by taking a shortcut through a caravan park and on to Pwll Gwaelod. The more scenic route heads around Dinas Island. The steadily rising trail offers several vantage points for a variety of wildlife, including seals that bask on the rocks, to fulmars and ravens that nest on the cliffs. At a height of 142 metres, Dinas Head offers superb views in all directions. Heather and gorse abound in summer, while small plants such as the harebell fight for what little space it can find. After cresting the headland, the path drops down into the small bay of Pwll Gwaelod. The gently shelving beach is popular with summer visitors, and many schools and colleges use the bay for water sports. Leaving the beach, the path rises rapidly to run along a section of steep cliffs and inaccessible coves, until dropping down into the pretty bay at Aberbach. The cove offers sheltered bathing, but the beach consists mainly of rocks and pebbles, with only a little sand being exposed at low tide. The path heads inland for a little while before returning to the coast. It then continues over a little walked stretch until reaching Castle Point, overlooking Fishguard Harbour. The headland was once an Iron Age site, while Fishguard Fort dates back to 1781. With its panoramic views over the harbour, the large cannon defended the town from privateers. Lower Fishguard once prospered from herring fishing and shipbuilding, and today the harbour is a popular boating centre. Over the years it has been used as a location for several feature films. Scenes from Moby Dick were filmed in the area, and Lower Town's quayside featured in the 1971 production of Under Milkwood. The official route passes below the town centre and continues along Marine Walk to the standing stones of the Gorsydd Circle, where there are excellent views across Fishguard Bay to Dinas Head and back along the coast to Garn Fawr. Fishguard is a small but busy town and offers all the basic amenities, including a tourist information centre. Just across the road, the Royal Oak Pub, where a peace treaty was signed after the last invasion of Britain in 1797. After skirting the town centre, the path drops down onto a wide causeway that connects Fishguard to the port at Goodwick. Here a mural depicts scenes from local history, while at the far end of the causeway is an information centre and marine life exhibition. The harbour, built in the early 1900s, was due to rival Liverpool as a transatlantic liner base. Unfortunately, the construction of the breakwater caused the port to silt up, and now only the Irish car ferry service remains. After leaving Goodwick, the path rounds Penanglis Head, and for the next few miles runs above several inaccessible coves. Overlooking Aberfylin Bay, this stone monument on Carriguastad Point commemorates the last invasion of British soil. 1,400 French troops and convicts landed on the coast and marched inland to Trehowell Farm. Local folklore tells of a Fishguard cobbler woman, Jemima Nicholas, who single-handedly rounded up several members of the invading force. It's thought that the French mistook the red flannel of her Welsh national costume to be that of a soldier's tunic. Continuing west, the path enters a wild and windswept section that leads to Strumble Head. The area is a magnet for birdwatchers, and an old wartime building has been converted into an observation shelter. It provides an ideal location for observing spring and autumn bird migrations. Strumble Lighthouse stands on the small island of Ynys Michael. It is now completely automatic and is controlled from an operations centre in Essex. The light is one of the most powerful in the British Isles and is visible for up to 26 nautical miles. The National Trail now enters a remote and rugged area and passes above precipitous cliffs of volcanic rock. At Pwllderry we find one of the most spectacularly located youth hostels in Britain, and it's an ideal spot to pause and enjoy the views across to the 140-metre high Pembrokeshire cliffs. After rounding the headland, the path drops down onto a storm beach at Aberbach. Half a mile inland is Tregwynt Woolen Mill, which has been in the Griffiths family since 1912. Originally water-powered, it is now mechanically operated and produces distinctive woolen goods that are exported as far afield as the United States and Japan. The coffee shop offers a selection of homemade food together with a wide range of regional products. We rejoin the path at the impressive storm beach of Abermawr, where the first transatlantic submarine cable was laid in 1873. After rounding Penmorfa Head, the path once again runs high above a section of steep cliffs, until dropping down into Abercastle Harbour. The inlet, known as Cwm Badau, or Valley of the Boats, is thought to have been a busy port as long ago as 1566. Grain was exported in more recent times, while lime and anthracite were landed and burnt in the lime kiln alongside the harbour. After leaving Abercastle, it's worth making a short detour across the fields to Longhouse Farm and the Bronze Age burial chamber of Carrig Sampson. The path continues along the wild and rugged cliff tops until arriving at Aberdraw, where the ruins of Trevine Mill overlook the rocky beach. This was just one of many corn mills that served the local community, but cheaper grain from abroad, together with better transportation links, resulted in its closure in the early 1900s. Just inland is the hamlet of Trevine. For walkers, the local store and pub offer the first real chance of replenishing supplies since leaving Fishguard. The path now runs very close to the cliff edge, and as landslides are quite common along this section, great care should be taken at all times. After leaving Aberdraw, it is not long before a large stone cairn comes into view, marking the entrance to the well-hidden harbour at Porthgain, where the quayside is dominated by the ruins of the old crushing plant. A small harbour was established here in the 1860s, while longer quays were added in 1902 to cater for the large sailing ships that used to tie up alongside the huge storage bins. Porthgain Village Industries operated a successful quarrying and brickmaking business here, and stone from Penclegir Quarry was stored in the large hoppers of the ruined but still imposing crushing plant. This area forms such an important part of Pembrokeshire's industrial history that the ruins are now scheduled ancient monuments. Facilities in the village are very limited, but an art gallery, the Sloop Inn and the Shed Bistro prove popular with locals and visitors. The coast path leaves the village via a set of steep steps at the end of the harbour wall, and it then opens out onto Ynys Barry, an area of huge spoil tips that plunge down to the sea. As you walk along the old tramway that once connected Penclegir to Porthgain, you can see the ruined quarry buildings up ahead. Only the smithy and stable block are recognisable now, but during the boom years millions of tons of crushed roadstone were exported to help metal the streets of London. Throughout the Depression following World War I, the company found it increasingly difficult to maintain profitability, and in 1931 quarrying came to an end. Just around the headland is the large west-facing beach of Traethllavan. Access to the beach is via a steep metal staircase, built at a cost of £53,000. This area proves very popular with walkers, and there are magnificent views along the coast towards Penberry, Carnllidi and St David's Head. The tower on Troina Castell marks our arrival at Aberystwyth Quarry and the Blue Lagoon. During a storm in 1904, the sea broke through and flooded the workings, ending the quarry's commercial future overnight. Today, only the ruined engine house remains, stranded high on a ledge above the Blue Lagoon. Aberystwyth has a gently shelving beach, and for many years the bay was a hive of smuggling activity. Aberystwyth to St David's Head is one of the wildest and most windswept stretches on the coast, and the 180-metre high Carnllidi dominates the landscape. As you approach the headland, the path gives way to open heath, and it's well worth taking the time to explore this area properly. Springtime sees the cliff tops covered in thrift and sea campion, while during the summer months the area is carpeted with gorse and heather. Just off the official route and easily overlooked is Carrig Coetan Arthur, a new Stone Age burial chamber. From the Stone Age through to the Middle Ages, the promontory was considered to be a centre of power, and from early Christian times a place of spiritual importance for the Celtic Church. At the tip of the headland is an Iron Age settlement that was protected by the Warriors' Dyke, a 4.5 metre high dry stone wall. Leaving the headland, the path swings eastwards towards Porthmelgan. Its easy access and sandy beach offers a pleasant alternative to the hustle and bustle of White Sands Bay. This is a very popular area, and consequently the path is being worn away. Working together, the National Trust and National Park Authority have introduced a programme of remedial measures. Here, steps have been cut into the hillside, but some visitors still add to the erosion by opting to walk on the grass. Along this stretch, several paths climb up to the summit of Carn Llidi, where on a clear day it's possible to see as far as the Wicklow Mountains in Ireland. Nearer to home there are commanding views of the surrounding coast and out towards Ramsey Island. White Sands Bay faces due west, making it one of the best surfing beaches in the county. During the summer months, the cafe at the top of the car park provides welcome refreshment, whilst down on the beach a flag system is used to indicate the areas patrolled by lifeguards. The beach is backed by an area of dunes, making an ideal setting for the local golf course, and legend has it that a Roman settlement called Minervia is hidden under the fairways. At the far end of the bay, the path skirts around the sandy beach at Porthcelli and arrives at St Justinian's. The small harbour is best known for its isolated lifeboat station that guards Ramsey Sound. The present boathouse was built in 1912 and serves one of the most treacherous stretches of coast in the country. St Justinian's is named after a Breton hermit who, according to legend, retreated to Ramsey Island to devote himself to God. His strict discipline proved too severe for some of his followers, who revolted and cut off his head. Undeterred, St Justinian returned to the mainland, carrying his head under his arm. This ruined chapel above the lifeboat station marks the spot where he is reputed to have come ashore. The RSPB Nature Reserve on Ramsey Island lies just offshore and is open from April the 1st or Easter, whichever is the earlier, to the end of October. Facilities are very limited, but toilets and refreshments are available at the farmhouse. Ramsey is home to a variety of seabirds, while the caves and coves provide shelter for the largest Atlantic grey seal colony in southern Britain. Boat trips run from St Justinian's and details are available from tourist information centres. Back on the mainland, the coast path runs alongside the tidal race of Ramsey Sound and then turns into Porthlusky Bay. Just around the headland is the small harbour of Porthclais that for many years served as a port to St David's. The inlet dried out between tides and visiting ships were beached in the creek and their cargoes unloaded. Coal was landed here as long ago as 1400 AD, while more recently culm and limestone were imported to supply the kilns that operated on either side of the harbour. From Porthclais it is only a mile inland to St David's, the smallest city in Britain. Along High Street you can find a selection of gift shops and galleries, together with cafes, restaurants and banks. From the square you could be forgiven for not realising that St David's Cathedral lies just behind these houses. Nestling in a hollow below the town, the cathedral was built on the site of a much older shrine, dedicated to St David, the patron saint of Wales. At its core is a 12th century building, but many exterior alterations were added during the 14th century. The Caervai sandstone used during restoration work in the 1860s gives the building its present-day purple appearance. Alongside the cathedral are the ruins of the Bishop's Palace, in its time one of the finest ecclesiastic buildings in Wales. The building was originally designed by Bishop Gower, while features such as its Flemish chimney were added in the late 13th century. This foreign influence can also be seen in the National Park's Tourist Information Centre. The building has become an attraction in itself, and staff can advise on local activities and sightseeing, and also help with booking accommodation. Resuming our journey at Porthclais, the path bears eastwards over the headland and passes above a steep rock anticline, where the near vertical slabs provide ideal rock climbing grounds. The path offers gentle walking as it heads towards St. Non's Bay, where a ruined chapel marks the spot where St. David is said to have been born. Alongside the chapel is the Holy Well, whose waters are reputed to have healing powers. The Chapel of Our Lady in St. Non was built in 1934 with stone from local ruins. After rounding a small headland, the path arrives at the picturesque Caerfai Bay, where the purple stone of St. David's Cathedral was quarried. The beach is very popular with holidaymakers, staying at the large caravan park that borders the path. The coastline to the east of the bay has been purchased by the National Trust with funds from the Neptune Coastline Campaign. The scheme was launched in 1965 and has raised in excess of £45 million for coastal preservation. The way ahead now runs across Morfa Common and an inaccessible stretch of cliffs until bearing left into the narrow inlet of Solva Harbour. Here there are fine views up towards the village, which is a very popular sailing and tourist centre. The path drops down to the quayside, near the harbour inn. Records show that Solva was a port as long ago as the 1300s, while in Victorian times it became the main lime-burning centre for the area, and the restored kilns can be seen opposite the quayside. Large numbers of visitors boost the population during the summer months, and the bustling village offers a good selection of craft shops, cafes and pubs. After leaving Solva, the path rises up onto the Gribbin Ridge and on towards Penryn Headland, and offers a good clifftop ramble that provides fine views across the bay to Newgale, where the path drops down onto the impressive mile-long Storm Beach. At low tide it's possible to walk along the northern end of the beach to rejoin the official path as it heads inland towards Trevraine Colliery. The mine was worked from 1850 to 1905, and the remains of the old chimney can still be seen. The coal was loaded into small boats that would beach on the sands of nearby Knowlton Haven, and it is here that the Coast Road, also known as Welsh Road, returns to sea level. The cove was once the main coal exporting port for the area, but now only an inn and caravan park remain. From Knowlton the path contours the cliff top before arriving at Druidstone Haven. Locally known as Drewston, the bay is named after a Norman knight, Alfred Drew. The official route continues to follow the Welsh Road for a little while, before returning to a badly eroded stretch of coastline. It then drops down to the northern end of Broadhaven Beach, whose golden sands attract many visitors during the summer months. The village offers a selection of accommodation, including a youth hostel. From Broadhaven, the recommended route again runs along the road, but if the tides are favourable, it's possible to walk along the Setlands, the stretch of beach that connects Broadhaven to Littlehaven. The hamlet was once a busy coal exporting port, but is now a popular tourist haunt that becomes congested in summer months. After leaving the village, the path runs above Gultrop roads and on through a pleasant wooded area before rounding Barrow Head. In years gone by, this isolated section made an ideal location for smuggling activities, and the path runs above the aptly named Brandy and Dutch Gin Bays. The Precambrian rocks of the north now give way to old red sandstone, and this can clearly be seen at St Bride's Haven, where the red rocks complement a small area of golden sand that is exposed at low tide. St Bride, or Bridget of Kildare, was a contemporary of St David, and although she never actually set foot in Wales, her followers built a chapel near to the site of the old limekiln. At the head of the inlet is St Bridget's Church, that was extensively restored in the 1860s. The going underfoot is now relatively easy as the path rounds the exposed Nab Head, and at the far end of Musselwick Sands it's possible to head inland to Marlois village. Musselwick to Martin's Haven is a very pleasant stretch as the path passes through a nature reserve that was opened by naturalist Ronald Lockley. Martin's Haven is the last sheltered cove on the southern flank of St Bride's Bay, and the inlet is popular with divers as the waters around the haven have been declared a marine nature reserve. At the tip of the Marloes Peninsula is the National Trust's Deer Park. It is contained behind a large wall that was built around 1800 to form part of the St Bride's estate. Although the official route cuts across the neck of the peninsula, it's well worth taking the footpath around the headland. From the old Coast Guard station there are sweeping views over the tidal race of Jack Sound to Skomer Island. Above the haven is Lockley Lodge, the Wildlife Trust of West Wales Visitor Centre. Further down the inlet is the Marine Nature Reserve Information Centre, together with public conveniences. Alongside the building you can see a Celtic prayer stone that was discovered in the foundations of the Victorian Wall. It is believed to date back to the 7th century. Martin's Haven is the embarkation point for the nature reserve of Skomer Island, which is noted for its bird colonies, fauna and prehistoric remains. The island is open to the public from Easter to October, and weather permitting, the Dale Princess departs from the haven each morning, Tuesday to Saturday. Advance booking is not required as fares are collected on board, with a further landing fee payable on the island. On arrival in Skomer's North Haven, passengers disembark via a flight of steep steps. An information booth offers a comprehensive selection of maps and guides, and all visitors receive an introductory briefing.
Skomer Island is a national nature reserve, and the primary reason is the huge number of seabirds that breed on this island. The puffins, for example, there's a few on the water down there at the moment, but in the whole island we've got approximately 5,000 to 6,000 pairs. Lesser black-backed gulls, they're the common gull you're going to see all over the island. We've got 16,000 pairs of those. Oh, that is a chuff. We've got several pairs of those. They're good birds to look out for. Anyway, back to seabirds. We've got several thousand pairs of kittiwakes, about 700 pairs of fulmars, but our commonest bird, and by far the most abundant, is the Manx shearwater, which is what this island is famous for. And we've got 160,000 pairs of those, all on this one island. Now, that constitutes approximately 1/3 of the world population.
After the briefing, you are free to explore the island with the stipulation that you must keep to the footpaths. In May and June, Skomer is carpeted with bluebells and sea campion, while later in the year the purple heather stands out against the bracken. The island supports many mammals, including mice, the Skomer vole, and a rabbit population that is estimated to be well over 15,000. At the centre of the island is the old farmhouse, although there has been little agricultural activity here since the late 1800s. The buildings have been renovated and sympathetically restored to provide overnight accommodation and an interpretation centre. Displays include a mock cliff face, together with several large paintings depicting life on the island. The island is home to over 100,000 pairs of Manx shearwater, but for many visitors the centre provides the only opportunity to view the birds, as during the day they stay out at sea and only come ashore at night. The area surrounding the farm is home to several pairs of short-eared owls, which account for over 25% of the Welsh population. In early summer the inlets and cliffs provide shelter for thousands of birds, and here at the Wick the cliffs rise up to over 60 metres, and the rock ledges are crammed with nests. Over 30 species reside on Skomer at various times of the year, and the numbers involved are quite impressive. 5,000 pairs of lesser blackback gulls, 2,000 pairs of herring gull, and up to 80 pairs of one of the island's largest predators, the great blackback gull. Add to that 17,000 pairs of kittiwake, together with storm petrels, guillemots and razorbills, and you can begin to understand why Skomer is such an important habitat. With over 6,000 pairs, the puffin colony is one of the island's biggest attractions, and the best viewing areas are found at North Haven, the Wick, and here in South Haven. The Atlantic puffin visits from April to early August and is instantly recognisable by its clown-like face. The birds assemble out on the water where they meet up with old partners before landing on the island. Puffins tend to mate for life, but younger birds may change partners if early breeding attempts fail. After mating, the pair set up home underground, normally returning to the same nest each year. After repairing and cleaning the burrow, the birds collect dry grass to line the nest. Once the chicks have taken to the water, the parents no longer have any reason to stay, and towards the end of July they begin to head south for warmer waters. Skomer is a very special place, and although it's not on the coast path, anyone making the effort to visit the island will find it a most rewarding experience. Back on the mainland, the path leaves Martin's Haven and continues on past Rennie Slip towards the large promontory of Gatehome and Marlois Sands. Gatehome consists of old red sandstone and lies just off the Horse's Neck. Marlois Sands is a wild and magnificent stretch of beach backed by steep cliffs. Overlooking the beach and just a few hundred yards inland is the youth hostel at Runway's Kiln. The coast path drops down onto the sands at Mill Bay. This stretch of coastline has been purchased by the National Trust, and the whole area is a paradise for geologists. The beach is a magnet for walkers, but special attention should be paid to the state of the tide at all times. The official path continues along the cliff top and around the edge of the disused Dale Airfield, once the home of HMS Goldcrest. From West Dale Bay, a footpath offers a shortcut to Dale Village, saving about 6 miles off your journey. St Anne's Head guards the entrance to the Milford Haven waterway, and there are a number of navigational beacons situated on the promontory. There has been a light on the headland since 1714, making St Anne's the oldest lighthouse on the Welsh coast. Just past the old Coast Guard Tower is a fine example of geological folding, known as the Cobbler's Hole. In addition to providing a landmark for Milford Haven, the light also warns of the St Gowan Shoal. The present lamp is 48 metres above sea level and is visible for up to 18 nautical miles. The clearly marked path skirts around the lighthouse keeper's cottages and heads northwards past Mill Bay and Wattick Bay before arriving at Dale Fort. It is then only a short walk down through the sycamore wood to the village and the Griffin Inn. Dale has a long seafaring tradition dating back to Tudor times, when fishing and shipbuilding were the main activities, but today it's a popular water sports centre that becomes very congested during the summer months. The path leaves the village at the far end of the beach and follows the road to Pickle Ridge and the Gann. At this point you have to choose between the inland high tide route over Mullock Bridge or continue along Pickle Ridge towards Sandy Haven. The Pickle Ridge lagoons were created by wartime gravel extraction and are now an important wildlife habitat that has been declared a site of special scientific interest. If you opt for the shoreline route, it is best to depart Dale on an outgoing tide, as it is usually possible to cross the Gann Bridge 2 hours either side of low water. The way ahead runs along the foreshore for a little while, and there are fine views over the entrance of the haven and its visiting oil tankers. After passing Monkshaven, the path rounds Great Castle Head and swings north towards Sandy Haven. Just up the lane from the creek are an old lime kiln, fireman's hut and livestock weighbridge. Sandy Haven is a pleasant tidal inlet that again requires knowledge of the tides. The stepping stones across the Pill are usually only accessible 2 hours either side of low water. Mistiming your arrival will result in a 4-mile detour inland that eventually rejoins the route on the east bank. Once across the river, the path heads up a narrow lane before turning through a caravan park and on along the cliff top to Milford Haven. Milford was once a major centre for the Atlantic fishing fleet, but now the docks have declined to the point where only a few trawlers are registered in the port. The docks were built in 1888 and have had a checkered history. By 1946, Milford was the fourth largest fishing port in Britain, but survives today largely on shipbuilding and general trading. It is somewhat ironic that these French trawlers find it more economical to land their catch in Milford rather than at their home ports. This catch will be loaded into refrigerated lorries for transport by road to France. Across the dock, a converted warehouse has been refurbished to house a maritime museum, and the once redundant dockside has now been restored to form a pleasant quayside development, while the marina has also brought much needed revenue to the area. From St Catherine's Quay we climb up to Hamilton Terrace and the Lord Nelson Hotel. The junction with the Rath marks the official recommencement of the coast path. This fine bronze statue commemorates the fishermen of Milford, and from this point there are fine views down the haven and out to sea. At Castle Pill the path follows the shoreline before joining up with the busy Nayland Road at Black Bridge. At the top of the hill it swings south towards Venn Farm before following a well-marked trail around the liquid gas terminal to eventually arrive at Hazel Beach. Continuing eastwards, the path passes Llanstadwell Church that sits on the water's edge and is dedicated to Saint Tidwell, a Welsh monk. At Nayland we drop down onto Brunel Quay, named after Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who founded the port in 1856 after making it the terminus of his South Wales Railway. Ahead, the skyline is dominated by the Cleddau Road Bridge, completed in 1975 at a cost of £10 million. After many years of decline, this area is now being rejuvenated with developments of quayside housing and a marina. From the waterside the path climbs up to the northern end of the bridge, where you can pause to contrast the views downstream with those looking upstream past the village of Burton. From the south side of the bridge the trail drops down into Pembroke Dock, where at Front Street one of the old Martello towers that was built as part of the inner defensive system has now been converted to a military museum. The Royal Naval Dockyard and Irish ferry terminal are hidden behind the massive defensive walls. During the late 1800s the town prospered from shipbuilding, but in 1926 the dockyard closed and the area went into sharp decline. Leaving the town, the path follows the northern shore of the Pembroke River and then crosses open fields as it heads towards the unmistakable outline of Pembroke Castle. The building is maintained by the Pembroke Castle Trust, and the entrance, situated at the top of Westgate Hill, is via the Barbican Gate. The gatehouse is a very impressive building as it stands guard over the outer bailey. Not only was it one of the main defensive fortifications, but it also housed the important residential parts of the castle. Across the outer bailey are the Great Keep, Dungeon Tower and Great Hall. The Great Keep is over 30 metres high and is considered to be one of the finest medieval cylindrical towers to be found anywhere in the UK. From the roof of the keep, it's easy to see how the castle maintained such a commanding position. During the Civil War, Pembroke was defended for Cromwell's parliamentarians, but at the end of the conflict, John Poyer switched allegiance to the Royalists, causing Cromwell to personally lay siege to the castle. After leaving Monkton Church, the trail drops down to Coyt's Mill Dam and a small inlet that floods during high tides. As it heads towards Brownslate, the path runs through open fields that offer occasional glimpses down towards the haven. After skirting around the site of Pembroke Power Station, the path arrives at Pwllcrochan Pill, an area known for its marshland fauna. Ragged robin and yellow flag iris thrive here, despite being under the constant influence of the nearby oil refinery flare stacks. St Mary's Church is now an educational and environmental centre, and Texaco, in conjunction with the Prince's Trust, have constructed boardwalks around this site of special scientific interest. After avoiding the refinery and jetties at Popton Point, the path turns into Angle Bay, where the chimneys of the cracking plant dominate the landscape. At the far end of the bay, some guidebooks indicate a low tide route across to Angle Point. This shortcut only saves half a mile and is not recommended. Angle Village is normally a quiet hamlet, but during the summer months it proves very popular with holidaymakers. St Mary's Church was restored in the 1850s with the unusual addition of salmon pink tiles to the chancel roof. Behind the church is a small fisherman's chapel dedicated to St Anthony. As the path heads round North Hill, it passes the Old Point House Inn, and this is a pleasant area to stop for refreshment before visiting the lifeboat station. Milford Haven is one of the busiest ports in the United Kingdom, and the RNLI has served the waterway for 140 years. Leaving the lifeboat station, the path continues westward, high above the waters of the haven. Lying just offshore is Thorn Island, one of the Victorian forts built in the 1860s as part of the Palmerston defences. At this point there are fine views across the haven to St Anne's Head. This area is susceptible to landslides, and care should be taken not to deviate from the marked route. The rocky shores of West Angle Bay provide one of the richest sites for fauna and flora in southwest Wales, and the gorse-covered hillside overlooking the beach is a delightful spot for wildlife and flowers. The bay used to support a brickworks complete with its own tramway, and records show that over 3,000 years ago, copper mined in the Wicklow Mountains of Ireland was landed on the beach. Having rounded the tip of the Angle Peninsula, the coast path turns to run along a remote stretch of cliffs that bear the full brunt of the Atlantic waves. The National Trail returns to sea level at the northern end of the bay at Freshwater West. During winter storms, the wind blows directly onto the beach, and the resulting waves can be quite spectacular. Freshwater West is a magnificent stretch of sand, but due to the strong tidal currents, bathing is considered to be very dangerous. Behind the beach is a large dune system known as the Burrows, which stretches inland towards Castle Martin. This fragile area has been designated a site of special scientific interest and is constantly under threat from large visitor numbers. Visitors are asked to keep off the dunes, and those following the coast path can either walk along the high water mark down on the beach or turn inland along the B4319. At the far end of the bay, the National Park Authority has preserved the last remaining seaweed collector's hut to be found in the county. Great Fursnip marks the start of a prohibited stretch of coastline and the Castle Martin tank range. The Army training estate prevents access to the next 6 miles of coast, with a further 3 miles only accessible when firing is not taking place. The official route from Freshwater West takes us along the B4319 to Castle Martin, where an old cattle pound forms a roundabout in the centre of the village. Opposite the pound is a sentry box guarding the road leading back to the coast, and if the range is not in use, you may proceed to stack rocks. However, if the range is active, you must continue inland past the MOD spectator viewing area, situated alongside the control tower near Warren. The road to Stack Rocks cuts right through the live firing area, where Flimstone Chapel stands isolated but unharmed. Access to the range is strictly controlled, so when it is open, the area becomes a mecca for birdwatchers and ramblers. The Green Bridge of Wales is one of the best examples of a natural arch to be found anywhere in the British Isles. The 25-metre high arch was formed by the coming together of 2 caves from either side of the headland. Elegig or Stack Rocks are 2 vertical limestone columns that were once natural arches. Elegig is Welsh for guillemot, and from late April through to early August the birds occupy every available nook and cranny. This is one of the most easily accessible seabird colonies on the coast, and the stacks are home to over 1,000 pairs of guillemots and around 120 pairs of razorbills. Although access to the range between Freshwater West and Stack Rocks is usually prohibited, the National Park Authority organises escorted walks through the danger area on certain days throughout the year. The walks start at Stack Rocks and follow a cliff-top route around Linney Head and on to Freshwater West, where transport is provided for the return journey. Advance booking is essential for these walks. This magnificent stretch of coastline consists of natural arches, caves and blowholes, and firing permitting should not be missed. Depending on military activity, it's possible to continue through Range East, the area between Stack Rocks and St Gavon's Head. At Saddlehead the path passes close to a pair of blowholes, and shortly afterwards the deep fissure of Huntsman's Leap comes into view. St Gavon's Chapel is found nestling in a cleft in the rocks. Dedicated to Gubbin, the abbot of a monastery in Wexford, the building dates back to the 13th century. The interior measures just over 5 metres by 3.5 metres and contains an altar. Outside, the waters of the now dried up well were reputed to have miraculous healing powers and were still being visited by the infirm as recently as the mid-1800s. The chapel restoration was carried out by the National Park Authority and has received the Prince of Wales Award for conservation. Once again, access to the next few miles of coastline depends upon military schedules. If favourable, you can continue directly towards Broadhaven, or better still, make a slight detour to visit St Govan's Head, the most southerly point in the county. When the range is closed, the inland route passes through Warren and Trevelyan Down. For many years Warren Church lay derelict, but thanks to the efforts of British and German troops based at Merrion Camp, the building has now been restored. After rounding St Govan's Head, the path runs above several small coves. If you have taken the inland route, the sentry box at the eastern end of Trevelyan Down, for the moment at least, marks the end of military activity. Broadhaven boasts a large expanse of golden sand, flanked by limestone cliffs. The area formed part of the Stackpole estate, which was obtained by the National Trust in 1976. The sand dunes built up when a retaining wall was erected to help create the Bosheston lily ponds. It's worth heading inland and following a route around the lakes that cover an area of 80 acres. The ponds are home to a variety of wildlife, including heron and kingfishers, and during the summer months the water lilies attract many visitors to this national nature reserve. Returning to the coast, the path rounds the headland at Saddle Point and borders the sand dunes of Stackpole Warren. It's then possible to head directly towards Barrafundle Bay, or take the more enjoyable route around Stackpole Head. Barrafundle is a delightful isolated bay that is only accessible on foot. Stackpole Quay was built in an old limestone quarry by Lord Corder in the late 1700s. Coal was landed in the harbour and used to heat the family home at Stackpole Court. The National Trust has converted some of the old buildings into tea rooms, public conveniences and holiday accommodation. As the path leaves Stackpole Quay and climbs towards the headland of Greenalla Point, the cliffs once again change from limestone to old red sandstone. Then runs along the undulating cliff top to Truant Point, which offers sweeping views over freshwater east. After dropping down from the headland, the path leads through the dunes to the beach. In the 1980s the dunes suffered badly from erosion, but after the introduction of sand trap fencing and the planting of marram grass, the remedial measures appear to have worked well. The National Trail now continues up onto Westmore Cliff, where there are fine views back along the coast towards Stackpole Head. It then drops down into Swan Lake Bay, which is a pleasant but isolated spot as there is no road access, although during the summer months it is sometimes possible to drive across the fields from Westmore Farm. After leaving Swan Lake Bay, the path rounds Eastmore Cliff and then drops down to run alongside Manorbier Bay. The fine Norman castle was the birthplace of Gerald de Barry, who later became the Welsh historian and chronicler Geraldus Cambrensis. The castle stands on a small rise overlooking the beach, and although a private residence, it's open to the public at Easter and from May through to September. On the opposite side of the valley is the parish church, with some parts of its nave predating much of the castle building. Its 14th century oak loft boasts one of the last remaining examples of medieval woodwork to be seen in Pembrokeshire. Leaving Manorbier, the path rises up past the Stone Age burial chamber of the King's Quoit. After rounding the headland of Priest's Nose, we take the lower path towards the Royal Artillery Range at Old Castle Head. Manorbier Camp is the main UK close air defence range for the British Army, and the coast path has to divert inland following the boundary fence. One of the areas released by the military is Scrinklehaven, which is divided into 3 separate coves. And once more there is a change in the rock from old red sandstone back to limestone. Above the haven, one of the old military buildings has been converted into a youth hostel. The path continues high above the limestone cliffs and then drops down to Lidstep Caverns, where the weathered rocks are more reminiscent of a moonscape rather than a seashore. A flight of steep steps leads up to Lidstep Point, where the sheer cliffs are a magnet for climbers. Down on the shoreline, the fine crescent-shaped beach attracts large numbers of visitors. Lidstep Haven is a privately owned holiday village with a large caravan park set on the hillside. The path runs along the shore to the far end of the bay. If the Army Rifle Range at Proud Gilter is active, you must head inland towards the village of Penally. If not, you can continue to Gilter Point, where there are fine views across the Caldy Island and St. Margaret's. No one has lived on the small nature reserve of St. Margaret's since 1851, but the ruins of the quarrymen's cottages can still be seen, and as landing on the island is prohibited, it provides a safe habitat for several seabird colonies, including 250 pairs of cormorant. As the path drops down from the headland, the broad expanse of South Beach opens up, and most walkers tend to walk along the shoreline towards Tenby. The official route, however, turns inland behind the sand dunes and crosses the fairways of the golf club before running alongside the railway line and into the town. Tenby is a pleasant and popular resort which offers a good selection of shops, restaurants and accommodation. Most walkers enter the town via the Esplanade, with its fine Regency and Victorian buildings that overlook South Beach and Castle Sands. Tenby became a walled town in the 13th century, with many alterations being added over the years. Today the Five Arches is the only remaining gateway, as the others were demolished in the 18th century. The narrow medieval streets of the old town lead to Tudor Square and the parish church of St. Mary's. As the narrow alleyway of Key Hill leads down towards the harbour, it passes the Tudor Merchant's House. The property is open to the public, and with features such as this Flemish chimney, it chronicles the life of a prosperous 15th century citizen. The harbour is dominated by Castle Hill, with its statue of Prince Albert and the old Coast Guard station. One of the buildings houses Tenby Museum, where there are many fine exhibits recording local history. Several 17th century cannons stand guard over St. Catherine's Fort, which was built in the late 1860s at a cost of £16,000. With a garrison of up to 60 men, it formed part of the Milford Haven defensive system. The picturesque harbour is a busy boating centre crammed with pleasure craft and fishing boats, and tide permitting, this is the departure point for sailings to Caldy Island. Just around the corner is Tenby Lifeboat Station, and in 2006 the purpose-built boathouse was the first station in the UK to receive the new Tamar-class lifeboat. North Beach forms a crescent of sand backed by steep cliffs, and in the middle of the beach is the large Goscar Rock. If time allows, it's well worth taking a boat trip to Caldy Island. Sailings depart from either Castle Beach or the harbour, and the crossing takes about 30 minutes. Built from limestone quarried on the island, the red-roofed monastery dominates the village. Even at its busiest, the island manages to convey a feeling of peace and calm. Caldy is probably best known for its perfume products, and in the gift shop you can sample and purchase the unique fragrances distilled from local plants such as gorse and lavender. The post office was completed in 1915, and 4 years later a dedicated mailboat was commissioned. There is a daily service to the mainland, except in bad weather when letters are stamped, delayed by rough seas. Caldy has been a home to monastic orders for many centuries. Today the monks belong to a Cistercian order, who first came to the island in 1929. The island community is served by the parish church of St. David's. After Henry VIII introduced the Dissolution of Monasteries Act, the building was put to a variety of uses, including a schoolroom and a smithy. The graveyard is a resting place for both monks and islanders alike, with each grave being marked by a simple wooden cross. Until its conversion to mains electricity in 1997, Caldy was the last Trinity House light to be powered by acetylene gas. The lamp stands at 65 metres above sea level and is visible for up to 13 nautical miles. The old priory, dedicated to St. Istid, lies between the lighthouse and the village, and this is thought to be the site of the first monastery that was established on the island in the 6th century. The church has a vaulted roof, while the floor is made up of cobblestones brought up from the beach. Alongside the stained glass window is a 16th century Ogham stone that was excavated from a Celtic burial ground near the farm. The monks have chosen to distance themselves from everyday life, and while tourism is an important part of the island economy, visitors are asked to keep to the marked paths and lanes and to respect the private areas of the monastic commune. Overlooking Priory Bay is a former 12th century watchtower that provides sweeping views over Carmarthen Bay. It has since been converted to a small chapel for prayer and meditation. Returning to Tenby, it's easy to see why Castle Hill held such an important defensive position, and the harbour, with its brightly coloured cottages, has a distinctly Mediterranean feel. The coast path resumes at the end of the croft, high above North Beach, and even though it's possible to make out Journey's End at Amroth far across the bay, there's still a lot of walking ahead. The soft shales of Waterwinch Bay have been eroded to form a pleasant cove, which is only accessible via a narrow lane. The route now swings inland for a little while before returning to the coast above the beach at Monkstone Point. It then drops down through Trevane Woods towards Saunders Foot. After leaving the woods at the Glen, you can either head into town via the main road, or tides permitting, drop down onto the beach and walk along the sands to the harbour. Today Saunders Foot is a thriving seaside resort, but it was once a busy port. The harbour was constructed around 1830 to service the local coal industry that developed in the valleys behind the town. High-quality anthracite was loaded into schooners for shipment to Bristol, Ireland and France. It is one of the most popular boating centres in the county, with fishing excursions and trips around Cauley Island proving very popular with visitors. The National Trail leaves Saunders Foot along the Strand, where a narrow-gauge railway once connected the harbour to the coal mines at Wiseman's Bridge and Stepaside. At Coppet Hall, the path utilises the route of the former railway line as it runs through a series of tunnels. Along this section, iron ore and coal deposits are still visible close to the mine shafts running into the cliff face. During the 1880s, the mines produced up to 100,000 tonnes of coal a year, but compared to the South Wales coalfield, mining techniques were judged to be inefficient, and by the early 1900s, the decline of the industry had begun. At the hamlet of Wiseman's Bridge, the path turns inland once more, but it is possible to walk along the beach if the tides are right. In August 1943, both Winston Churchill and General Eisenhower were present when the beach and cliffs were used for a dress rehearsal of the Normandy landings. Here at Amroth, the storm beach is constantly shifting, and a large number of groins have been constructed in an attempt to stabilise its movement. The last mile of our journey is somewhat of an anticlimax as it runs along the seafront through Amroth village. After crossing some 280 stiles, 100 bridges, and passing through more than 180 miles of varied scenery, the National Trail comes to an end opposite the New Inn public house.